Hello, everyone. Tonight we're sneaking through the alleyways of ancient Rome, not to find senators or philosophers, but to hunt for the crunchy, greasy, and occasionally suspicious treats that fueled an empire. If you've ever wondered what Julius Caesar might have grabbed for a midnight snack, or how Roman teenagers got their sugar fix when there was no Instagram to show it off, you're in the right place. Forget silver platters and imperial banquets. Tonight is about street carts, crumbling markets, honey-soaked pastries, and whatever fast food the Romans could wrap in a fig leaf and call lunch before we raid the snack stalls. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you're truly into these delicious little rabbit holes of history, and ring the bell if you want to be first in line for future bites. If you're listening in New York at 1 a.m., or maybe in Saigon just before the first rooster crows, leave a comment to let me know there's something wonderful about picturing insomniacs across the world, scrolling through Roman recipes while the city sleeps. Now, dim the lights. Maybe crack a window for a little night breeze. Join me as we time travel into a city where the air smells like roasted chickpeas, garum sauce, and the distant promise of questionable cheese. Step up to the counter, friend, and let's see what's cooking in the world of ancient Rome's junk food. You step out into the half-dark of a Roman morning, the sky a watercolor wash of pink and ancient smog, somewhere between optimistic and we really ought to invent a chimney. The city's rooftops are still holding on to the last chill of night, but already, below the shadowy eaves, something stirs a low, humming energy, like the moment just before the bakery door opens on a winter's morning in your own hometown. Only here, the air smells different. It's thick with wood smoke and yeast, a little animal sweat, and a promise you can almost taste bread, warm and fresh. A smell that must go back to the first poor fool who ever decided to pound up some grain and see what happened. You follow your nose past shuttered shops and sleepy beggars, your sandals slapping on stones that were probably last swept when Julius Caesar still had all his original teeth. There's a rhythm to the city at this hour, a music made up of mule carts trundling in from the countryside, the distant yelp of a rooster, someone's dinner later, if he's not careful, and the very faint, slightly frantic chattering of street urchins comparing loot from last night's adventures. But you're drawn to the flicker of firelight and the soft, ancient poetry of bread rising in the dark. The first stall you pass is more of a stone archway with ambitions. The baker, who has flour in places flour should never be, is already up to his elbows in dough, muttering prayers to Vesta, goddess of the hearth, and probably, by this hour, patron saint of burned crusts. His hair stands at odd angles, as if he's been experimenting with yeast as hair product. He gives you a look that says, if you want a loaf, get in line behind those chickens, and you wonder just briefly if those chickens are actually ahead of you in the pecking order. Inside, the oven glows like a secret sun, its mouth wide, waiting. You watch as the baker leans in, arms outstretched, and in that moment, you can almost believe in Roman engineering. There are loaves shaped like wheels and helmets, flatbreads blistered and bubbling, and mysterious black lumps that might once have aspired to be a baguette before their tragic, fiery demise. He shoves one of these toward you, still steaming, the crust crackling, the middle fluffy as a cloud you want to bite. You pay him a few grimy coins, which he inspects with the suspicious air of a man who's been burned by both customers and currency exchanges. You take your bread still hot, so hot it almost stings your fingers, and you let the steam curl up into your nose. This is no modern bakery where gluten is a 4-letter word. Here, bread is a small act of defiance, the answer to every hunger, the backbone of breakfast, lunch, and what do we feed the emperor's army before a big day of conquering? A single bite is half smoke, half sunlight, and you could swear you taste the whole of Italy in their earthy, ancient, and a little bit chaotic around you. More Romans emerge, squinting at the dawn, shuffling in tunics that are halfway between pajamas and day wear. Some have brought their own olives to stuff inside the loaf, some a drizzle of oil, others just the hope that today's batch will be a little less survival food and a little more delicacy. The children, of course, just want the burnt bits, the Roman equivalent of those crispy fries at the bottom of the bag. You break off a hunk, hand a piece to a kid who's mastered the art of looking both pitiful and grateful. and instantly. You're part of the morning market's unspoken bargain food for kindness, kindness for a smile, and a story to tell when you get home, somewhere behind you. A baker's apprentice sneezes into the flour. Tradition. Probably. The city is waking up, the sun climbing over a skyline of terracotta and marble. And suddenly you realize, for all their statues and swords and grand pronouncements, the Romans were just like us in the things that mattered. They wanted something warm and filling to start the day. They wanted the comfort of routine, the chatter of neighbors, the fleeting pleasure of bread so fresh it almost forgives yesterday's mistakes. You wander on, clutching your loaf, ready to discover what other edible secrets Rome has tucked away in its tangled streets. The air, still scented with yeast and wood smoke, follows you like a memory, like a promise. And for a moment, you let yourself just breathe. The city exhales. You do too. Hush. And breathe. You keep walking, the streets slowly swelling with the heartbeat of Rome, shouts from vendors hawking everything from pottery to pickled fish, wheels clattering, and the kind of random singing that only happens before noon, and only in neighborhoods where nobody can afford dignity. You notice your own bread is already a little lighter. Amazing how quickly you can demolish a loaf when your only other breakfast options are, well, let's see. If you're a Roman of the just, happy to be alive class, you are about to be intimately acquainted with pools. Pools. The food of farmers, soldiers, and anyone who thought oatmeal. But sadder sounded like a winning start to the day. You round a corner into a small forum where a cluster of old women in aprons that haven't been washed since Augustus was in diapers are stirring vast cauldrons. What's inside isn't quite porridge, isn't quite soup, and definitely isn't going to impress a food critic. This is pulse, a sort of barley mush that might, if you're lucky, have been spiced with a handful of salt or the optimistic scraping of a garlic clove. The smell, well, it's not bad. If you like the aroma of wet rocks and determination, one of the women ladles out a helping into a crude wooden bowl, thrusting it at you as if daring you to complain. You pay your 2 or 3 coins, half of which she pockets, the rest destined for the shrine of some minor kitchen god, and take a cautious spoonful. The texture is pure Roman, a little lumpy, occasionally gritty, somehow both gluey and dry at the same time, as if the barley can't quite decide whether to surrender to the boiling water or rebel against it. There are rumors, whispered in the steam, that sometimes a rich neighbor will toss in a pinch of cheese, or even gasp a sliver of dried sausage. But today your pulse is strictly classic. As you eat, you watch the city wake fully. A baker's boy, no more than 10, already caked in flour, and ambition rushes by, carrying a tray of panis lapidosis, the infamous pebble bread, a specialty for those who like their food with a bit of dental peril. It's bread baked with the grit of the bakery's stone oven, little bits of sand and gravel stuck in the crust as if the city itself wanted a taste. The trick, the boy winks as he sells you a piece for a single copper coin, is to eat around the crunchiest bits, or at least to chew carefully and pray to Minerva for strong teeth. You take a bite, there's the crisp outer shell, warm but with an alarming undertone of, why is it so hard? You imagine the teeth of 1,000 legionaries worn smooth by years of pebble bread, the dentists of Rome shaking their heads and thinking, blessed be the grain. But curse these ovens. You wash it down with a splash of Pascha the vinegary, watered down wine beloved by soldiers, laborers, and anyone who can't afford actual wine at this hour. It tastes exactly how you'd expect like wine that has been through some things. Wine that's seen the bottom of the barrel and decided to just keep going. Don't get the wrong idea. Romans could be fussy eaters, if you had money. You might start your day with bread dipped in honey, a bit of sheep cheese, a handful of fresh figs, or even imported dates. But for most, breakfast is all about speed, fuel, and the hope that you can hold out until midday. When the good stuff comes out, you, however, are here for the full experience. So, you let the last of the pools settle in your stomach like a gentle promise you will not starve, at least not before noon. There's a constant hum of transaction all around you. Vendors banter, kids scuffle over fallen figs. A stray dog noses through a pile of cabbage leaves. Occasionally, the baker's boy sneaks a pebble bread to an old man who, judging by his clothes, Hasn't had a good breakfast since the Republic fell. Nobody bats an eye. Rome is loud, proud, and practical if you can eat. You do. And if you can sneak a little kindness into your day. You might just find yourself blessed by Fortuna, or at least spared her worst mischief. And yet, there's more here than just food. There's ritual. Every bite of poles, every crunch of pebble bread, is a thread in the city's tangled tapestry. Soldiers eat this on the march. Farmers eat it at dawn. Students eat it before lessons, praying they won't get called out for sleeping through Cicero's favorite speech. The air is sharp with the scent of fresh garlic, a few herbs, and the kind of hope that rises with the sun. You notice the chatter, the laughter, the way everyone seems to know everyone else's business. Breakfast is never private. There's always someone ready with a joke, a warning, or a wild rumor about what's coming down the Appian Way. You toss the last piece of pebble bread to the dog, who accepts it with a look that says, "It's food. I don't ask questions." And you keep moving, belly full sort of, teeth intact mostly, heart surprisingly light. The city is opening up before you like a stage play, and you are both audience and actor, swept along by the rhythm of Roman life. A centurion passes, grumbling about his rations. A poet argues with a fishmonger over the price of a salt herring. Somewhere, someone starts singing an old love song to Venus. Just because, this is breakfast in ancient Rome, simple, chaotic, a little dangerous to your molars, but filled with the same longing for comfort and connection you'd find in any city, any age. You brush the crumbs from your hands, take a last look at the old women with their cauldrons, and promise yourself tomorrow, maybe you'll splurge on cheese. For now, you let the city carry you forward. The day is young, the possibilities endless, and your stomach well. Let's just say it's thinking ahead to lunch, a hush, and breathe. You barely make it 2 alleys past the old women with their bubbling cauldrons. When it happens, your nose, trained by years of bland barley gruel and the occasional whiff of wood smoke, catches something both delicious and alarming wafting over the clamor. Welcome to the realm of ancient Roman snacks, a swirling, hissing, chaotic world that makes modern fast food seem as tame as a toga party thrown by librarians. The street is alive now, pulsing with bodies. You dodge a mule cart loaded with amphorae, sidestep a philosophical debate complete with dramatic hand gestures, and nearly get whacked in the head by a fishmonger's net as he launches a particularly stubborn mullet onto a stall. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the city's arteries, pumping salt, olive oil, and gossip through every open square. Your stomach, already complaining about the grit-to-poles ratio, leads you straight to a popina, the ancient Roman answer to the modern food truck, only without wheels, health codes, or any guarantee that you won't walk away with a slightly new perspective on gastrointestinal risk. These open-front snack shops crowd the lower districts, especially near the markets, the baths, and anywhere a crowd might gather with a few sesterces and a willingness to gamble with their digestion. You hover by the counter, eyeing the available treats, the shopkeeper, a wiry man with hands permanently stained by wine, salt, and the anxieties of public service, grins at you like a cat who's just seen a mouse in fancy sandals. His countertop is covered in dishes, some steaming, some suspiciously room temperature, all begging for a bite. What's on offer for starters? Libum the Roman cheese bread that, depending on who baked it, is either the fluffiest cloud of fresh ricotta and honey or a hockey puck masquerading as cuisine. You take a nibble, and it's surprisingly good pillowy, just sweet enough to distract from the fact that it probably sat in the back room since dawn. Next to it, plates of olives glistening with oil, shards of hard cheese, a bowl of salted nuts, and, wait, is that, yes, lupini beans. The beans are earthy, bitter, and chewy, but with a squirt of vinegar and a pinch of salt. They're the kind of snack you'd eat by the handful if you weren't worried about being seen by someone important. Then you spot a tray of what looks suspiciously like chicken nuggets. Not so fast. These are dormice, the luxury snack of the bold and the wealthy, fried up with honey and poppy seeds until they're golden and slightly unsettling. You watch a magistrate in a stained purple cloak pop one in his mouth, trying not to grimace as the tail dangles between his fingers. For a moment. You consider trying one, then you remember you're not that brave. or that rich. Besides, you like your snacks to stay in the not adorable pet category. The real star of the Peppina, however, is garum, garum, the fish sauce to end all fish sauces, the mysterious potion that Romans put on. Well, pretty much everything. It's made by fermenting fish guts, bones, the whole shebang in vats under the Mediterranean sun for weeks or months, depending on how angry the chef wants the sauce to taste. The smell is impossible to describe. Imagine the sea at low tide. Add a whiff of anchovy, some mysterious basement notes, and then punch yourself in the face with a bouquet of salt and vinegar. That's garum. You watch as the shopkeeper pours garum over nearly everything: olives, beans, cold chunks of lamb, eggs, even slices of fruit. You gather your courage, pick up a slice of flatbread, dip it in garum, and take a bite. It's salty, tangy, briny, and surprisingly addictive. You feel your taste buds wake up, then immediately wonder if they're actually crying out for help. A couple of kids next to you are dunking fried fish in garum, laughing at each other's contorted faces. The old lady from the next stall rolls her eyes. "Barbarians," she mutters. "Wouldn't know real flavor if it danced naked on the Forum." Next, the snack menu Meritum, a garlicky cheese spread pounded with herbs, olive oil, and sometimes nuts, crumbled over bread like a kind of proto-pesto. Salsum, salted pork, cut paper thin and sold in waxed bundles, and skewers of botulus. That's right, Roman sausage. You grab a skewer, let the oily fat drip onto your hand, and taste it. Spicy, peppery, smoky if you close your eyes. You could almost imagine a backyard barbecue, except you're standing in a city with more statues than trees. There are desserts too, if you can call them that. Cups of dried figs stuffed with nuts and drizzled in honey. Little cakes sweetened with grape syrup and sprinkled with sesame seeds. A few wrinkled dates for the lucky or for the unlucky. A sticky handful of leftover barley sweetmeats. The dessert nobody really asks for, but everyone eats when desperate. Street performers weave through the crowd, juggling oranges, reciting poetry, and occasionally offering dubious fortune-telling for the price of a pastry. You see a pair of gladiators eating fried chickpeas and arguing over the best type of garum. There are different grades, from the cheap stuff you put on lentils to the liquid gold reserved for imperial feasts. One gladiator claims he could drink the stuff straight. The other says he tried, once, and hasn't tasted anything since. The Peppina is loud, bright, and deliciously chaotic. You rub elbows with everyone's students, laborers, the odd senator incognito in a humble cloak. Nobody cares who you are, as long as you pay. The laughter is contagious, the smells are strong, the food is dangerously addictive. For a moment, you are just one more hungry Roman in the greatest city in the world, eating with your hands, licking oil from your fingers, and not caring who's watching. The sun climbs higher. You realize you've lost track of time, distracted by all the possibilities, every bite a new adventure, every flavor a tiny rebellion against the monotony of barley mush and pebble bread. You're sticky with honey, your lips tingling from garum, and your mind already wandering toward the next meal. Maybe you'll try the dormouse after all. Maybe the city calls. You toss a final coin to the Peppina keeper and melt back into the river of bodies, belly full, heart lighter, taste buds slightly traumatized, but let's admit it, alive. A hush. And breathe. You leave behind the noisy Peppina with its chorus of sizzling, sloshing, and occasionally snoring patrons, blinking into the blinding noonday sun. The city's core, the Forum, stretches before you, columns dazzling white, statues lined up like stern marble librarians, and the air practically vibrating with voices pleading, haggling, arguing, sometimes all three at once. This is the stomach of Rome. If Rome had a stomach made of stone and scandal, here, the city's population converges in a daily stampede. Everyone from aspiring poets to slippery politicians, soldiers on leave, merchants, gossip mongers, pickpockets, and the inevitable philosophers quoting Seneca with one hand while stuffing cheese bread in their mouth with the other. If you thought lunch rush was a modern invention, think again only here. Lunch is less about calorie counting and more about elbowing your way to the juiciest rumor or the last skewer of sausage. You pause beneath a statue of Julius Caesar, whose stone eyes seem to say, "I conquered Gaul, but could I ever get a table at noon in the Forum? Unlikely." The marble beneath your hand is cool, almost comforting, and you can hear the echo of sandals and more sandals. Everyone is moving, talking, eating, always in motion. Your stomach grumbles again. Forget the fancy feasts there for senators and rich landowners with time to waste. You want what the ordinary people eat, food that's fast, cheap, and hopefully not the last thing you ever taste. Lucky for you, the Forum is alive with vendors, hawkers, and a kind of culinary chaos that makes every meal an adventure and every bite a minor miracle of survival. First stop, a man with a tray strapped around his neck, the ancient equivalent of a human food cart. He's selling Panis Militaris, the legendary Roman soldier's hardtack. You buy a hunk, nearly crack a tooth, and realize why the Roman legions needed so many dentists. Still, it fills a corner of your belly, and you can always soak it in wine if you want it to be slightly less dangerous. Someone else is hawking pulls again. Is it ever not available? But this time with a twist: lentils, wild herbs, and a splash of that omnipresent garum, which you now notice clings to everything in Rome like a particularly insistent street urchin. You try a bowl. It's earthy, tangy, hearty, and, if you close your eyes, not too far off from that artisanal rustic porridge you paid $20 for at a brunch spot last year. Romans, you realize, are the original foodies, minus the Instagram filter. Then comes the parade of finger food, salsam, thinly sliced cured pork, still glistening with fat, skewers of grilled fish with a crust of cumin and coriander, chickpea fritters dusted with fennel seeds and sold by a boy whose only ambition is to sell out and go swim in the Tiber. You spot a woman with a basket of eggs hard-boiled, rolled in cracked pepper and herbs. She offers you one for a coin, and when you bite through the shell, the yolk is soft and warm, like sunshine in your mouth. Now, you're in the thick of the crowd, shoulder to shoulder, with old men who smell of wine and ambition, sharp-tongued market women, toga-clad orators rehearsing speeches with their mouths half full, and children darting between legs, trying to pilfer whatever they can reach. The noise is a constant hum, broken by shouts, fresh sardines, sweet figs, try my cheese. It's almost new, and the occasional clash of two rival sellers arguing over whose olives are more authentically Etruscan. The Forum is where the lines blur the rich and the poor, the local and the foreigner, the honest and the, well, optimistic. You overhear a group of soldiers joking about their latest campaign. The only thing tougher than the Germanic tribes is my mother-in-law's cabbage stew. Laughter ripples through the crowd, punctuated by the smack of a hand on a friend's back and the crack of a bread crust splitting open. You let your senses guide you here. The tang of vinegar-soaked onions, there. A whiff of sweet grape must. Someone ladling out cups of watered wine and mulsum that's wine with honey. For when you want your buzz to have a little dessert, you grab a cup, sip, and feel the warmth spread all the way to your toes. Or maybe that's just the sun baking the flagstones. If you're feeling bold or foolish, you can try the Forum's most notorious treat stuffed sow's udder. Yes, you heard that right. A glistening, gelatinous slab, stuffed with minced meat and herbs, sliced thin and served cold. Chefs claim it's a delicacy. But you notice that only the bravest seem to eat it twice. Still, you take a bite. It's surprisingly delicate, the fat melting on your tongue, the herbs cutting through with a sharp green note. You'll never admit it, but it's not half bad. Lunch in the Forum is never just about food. It's a social spectacle, a gossip mill, a theater of human ambition and appetite. You hear the latest political intrigue. Did you hear about Flavius swears he saw a Vestal virgin eating garlic, which, as everyone knows, is forbidden? Scandal, and someone's always offering a wager on the next gladiator match, or the return of a lost legion. The sun begins its slow slide westward. Merchants start packing up, their voices hoarse, their purses heavier. You lick your fingers, wipe your mouth with the edge of your tunic, and feel a pleasant fullness, not just of food, but of noise, laughter, and a sense that you've tasted Rome, in all its messy, marvelous humanity. For now, there's a hush, a pause in the chaos, a breath before the city's next act. You step off the blinding marble of the Forum and into a maze of back alleys, where the sun struggles to pierce through laundry lines and 3 stories of mismatched tenements. The air, suddenly, is a warm, yeasty cloud flour and rising dough, a faint tang of smoke, and something else. Is that cumin sesame? Or maybe just the ghost of breakfast, still lingering in the cracks of old brick walls? Rome's bakeries, Pistrina, are less like shops and more like culinary cathedrals for the common citizen. Here, in dawn's earliest hours, teams of bakers have already been at work for hours, sweaty, bare-armed, tossing dough and curses, the oven's heat making everyone glow like newly minted denarii. Their lives revolve around 2 things, fire and flour. And maybe, if they're honest, the neighborhood gossip, which rolls through the door with every new customer. You nudge past a pair of house slaves arguing about which bread will impress their mistress, and duck into the closest pistrinum. The first thing you feel is the heat, like opening a lion's mouth. But instead of being devoured, you're handed a thin, disc-shaped loaf panis quadratus marked with that signature crosshatch, designed for easy breaking and fair division. It's still warm. You pull it apart, steam curling up, and the crust is so crisp it snaps like thin ice on a puddle. Inside, the crumb is soft and stretchy, flecked with bran, and you realize this is no afterthought. This is life. Roman bread comes in all shapes and social statuses. There's panis plebeius, coarse and dense, the working man's fuel, panis siligineus, made from refined wheat for those with heavier purses, honeyed loaves for festival days, and little, crunchy buccellatum biscuits for the road. The poor soak yesterday's bread in watered wine or olive oil, an ancient Roman version of recycling, while the rich send slaves at dawn for the freshest rolls, piping hot and layered with imported poppy seeds or even a scattering of dried fruit. And the bakery. It's more than just a place to buy bread. It's a city's beating heart. Here, neighbors swap news and insults with equal ease. The baker's wife, flour smeared across her arms like war paint, shouts a greeting that's either a blessing or a warning. Someone slips a coin into your hand. Just bring back the dark rye, not that white stuff. The doctor says it's good for the humors. There's always a line out the door, half the crowd waiting, the other half loudly complaining about the wait. You hear children playing knucklebones in the dust outside, daring each other to sneak a free heel from the cooling racks. One old man swears he once saw Julius Caesar himself buy a round loaf here, though he admits it was a long time ago, and maybe I'd had a little too much Molson. You laugh, because every bakery has at least 3 Julius Caesar stories, and everyone ends with the best bread in Rome. Inside, a delivery boy sweeps past you with a basket stacked high. Destined for the baths, nothing makes a bathhouse crowd happier than bread and gossip, especially when dipped in a spicy olive tapenade or slathered with a sharp sheep's cheese. If you're lucky, you might catch the moment when a new tray of libum comes out small. Sweet cheese breads, perfumed with bay leaf and sticky with honey. A dessert worthy of the gods, or at least the local magistrate. Not everything is sweet and wholesome, though. The baker is always watching for thieves, for competitors, for the government grain inspector who pops in unannounced to weigh the flour and grumble about taxes. You learn that even the baker's dog, curled in the corner, is suspicious of strangers, though he'll gladly accept a crust if you offer it. But bread, glorious bread, is the city's unifier. The poor clutch it as lifeline. The rich display it on tables piled high with fruit and cheese. Proof that even the softest hand must break bread to live. When grain shortages threaten, the people riot, demanding their daily ration. More than one emperor has lost sleep, and sometimes his head over the question of who will feed Rome, a problem solved not by philosophers or generals, but by the humble baker at the corner oven. Sometimes, you'll hear a song drifting from the alley, a baker's apprentice humming tunelessly as he shapes dough for the morning rush. The words are old, older than Caesar, something about luck and yeast and the gods who watch over bread. You listen for a moment, torn between a second roll and a walk along the river. Then you step out, blinking into the bright Roman day, hands still dusted with flour, your stomach full, your mind dancing with the rhythm of the city's daily bread. For a heartbeat. Everything is quiet, just the scent of warm loaves, the echo of laughter, and the promise that, Whatever else changes, Rome will always have bread, a hush, and breathe. You drift away from the bakery with a belly full of bread. But the day is young, and the city's appetite is just hitting its stride. There's a particular itch now, not hunger, exactly, but that restless urge for something a little decadent, a little unnecessary. Romans called it second breakfast. But let's be honest, it's dessert. And you're not waiting until after dinner. In a city where emperors named their horses as senators and philosophers could be found drinking vinegar in the public baths, nobody's judging you for craving a little sugar before noon. Follow the scent of roasting nuts and caramelizing honey, and you'll soon find yourself among the pop-up vendors of Rome's sweetest corners. Street sellers wave their treats like ancient magicians, dulce domestica stuffed dates, globuli deep-fried cheese balls, dripping with honey, and even a tray of what can only be described as proto-donuts, small puffs rolled in sesame and sugar. There's a sparkle in the air, part sunlight and part the dusting of ground nuts that floats from the vendor's quick hands. You sidle up to a cart run by an old woman whose face is lined like an Etruscan fresco, her hair tied in a scarf, her tongue sharp as a gladius. She presses a date into your palm, soft, brown, glossy with syrup and stuffed with a spicy paste of pepper, pine nuts, and just a hint of salt. The first bite is a revelation, sticky, sweet, spiced, a shock of flavors that crackle down your tongue and make you forget, for a moment, that half the city is watching. The line behind you grows restless, so you shuffle sideways to a boy spinning honey into thin, golden ribbons, draping them over fig cakes still steaming from the oven. He laughs when you nearly burn your fingers. "You must be new," he says. "We Romans like our sweets, like we like our victories sticky, loud, and with a hint of danger, all around." The city's soundtrack is different here. No shouts of senators or clang of swords. Just the soft crunch of nuts underfoot and the happy smack of lips. Someone bites into a slab of placenta cake. Yes, the Romans went there with the name. Layered with honey, soft cheese, and pastry sheets. You sneak a piece, and it's rich and luxurious, sticky on your fingers, tasting of wheat fields and wild bees. Beside you, a mother bribes her toddler with a cluster of candied almonds. The child drops half on the street, and a passing dog eats them, tail wagging in approval. The world's first 5-second rule is invented right here. You hear vendors calling, "Libum libum," still warm, sweet with honey, come and get it. The tiny cheese breads are wrapped in bay leaves, the aroma so heady it makes your head spin. You take one, bite, and the sweetness floods your mouth. You can almost believe in the gods when the honey hits your tongue. No wonder priests offered libum as sacrifices, though you suspect the priests also snuck a few for themselves. Even Jupiter would have approved. Not everything is soft and yielding. There are crostuli crunchy fried strips, not unlike modern churros, but drenched in honey and black pepper. You taste, your teeth snap, and the contrast of sweet, heat, and crispiness is electric. A poet nearby composes a love letter to a sesame biscuit, only to have it stolen by a seagull before the ink dries. This is Rome, after all. The birds are as bold as the people. Pass a corner, and you're in the spice district, where cinnamon and cardamom perfume the air. And wealthy matrons send slaves to haggle over honey imported from Spain or Africa for a few sesterces more. You can taste musk cakes, scones sweetened with grape must, sticky and earthy, the flavor of a vineyard pressed into a bite. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear Bacchus laughing in the background. Everywhere, children and grown-ups alike lick honey from their hands, grin with nut-studded teeth, and argue over who makes the best satura, a crumbly pastry filled with dried fruits, nuts, and more honey, if you're wondering. The answer is always my grandmother. Some sweets are only for the festival days, when the city erupts in parades and priests toss candied chickpeas to the crowd, turning every street into a noisy, sticky free-for-all. And then, just as your sugar-high crests, you find a shaded alcove with a family selling patina de Pieris pear pudding baked with honey, wine, and the faintest hint of garum. Because Romans put fish sauce in everything, even dessert. You taste, and it's strange, Not bad. Just Roman. A recipe you'll remember forever, if only because it made you rethink everything you thought you knew about pudding. You lean back against a sun-warmed wall, fingers sticky, heart happy, in this corner of Rome. Sweetness isn't just a flavor, it's a language, a memory, a way to say life is short. Let's have another bite. All the city's struggles, the clamor and chaos and ambition, dissolve for a moment in a handful of honey and nuts. A hush, and breathe. You wander deeper into the city's belly, fingers still tacky from honey and nuts, when the midday sun starts its relentless drumbeat on your shoulders. Rome, in case you hadn't noticed, doesn't do subtlety, especially when it comes to heat. The air above the paving stones wobbles with mirage, and suddenly the idea of swallowing another bite of cake seems unthinkable. What you need, what every Roman eventually craves, is a drink. Something cold, something sharp, something to cut through the sugar and the dust. The first thing you notice is the shouting, because Romans never just offer refreshments. They sell them like their lives depend on it. Mulsum, mulsum, cries a boy waving a jug over his head, and the crowd surges. This, you soon learn, is wine sweetened with honey, served tepid but sometimes for the lucky. Over a scoop of shaved snow, brought down from the mountains by mule train and sold at prices that would make an emperor blush. You taste. The wine is rough, tart, the honey only just taming its bite, and the snow melts on your tongue with a tiny shock. It's not exactly a frappuccino, but it's cold, it's sweet, and for a second, you forget about the sweat soaking your tunic. A line of men with blue-stained hands huddle over tubs of pasca, the infamous soldier's drink. Wine vinegar diluted with water, sometimes jazzed up with a handful of herbs or even a slice of cucumber. It's not as grim as it sounds. And in this heat, the acidity wakes you up like a slap. You gulp it down, make a face, and a legionnaire nearby claps you on the back, puts hair on your chest. He grins, his own cup filled with something suspiciously green. Romans believed pasca was healthy, the electrolyte drink of its day. The only thing missing is a slogan pasca because dehydration is for barbarians. But the real magic is at the corner stall, where a trio of kids argue over cups of sherbettum. The vendor, looking every bit like an ex-gladiator who found his true calling in fruit, ladles out chilled syrup mixed with snow and a squeeze of lemon. The flavor, think of a Roman lemonade stand. Only the lemons might be more like sour citrons. And the sugar, honey. Of course. Or if you're fancy. Grape must. The drink is icy, tart, lip-smacking. You take a cup, sip, and the cold stings your teeth, bringing you back to yourself in a way that even a whiff of garum can't. Behind the wine merchants, you spot the real action amphorae and jugs lined up along a stone trough. Water trickling from a lion's mouth. Some Romans drink their water straight if they're feeling brave, and the aqueduct is flowing. But most folks aren't idiots. Water, after all, is for baths, not bellies. Even the local doctor recommends a little something fortifying. So you join the line for calda, hot water, mixed with wine, honey, and the occasional twist of herbs. Yes, hot, in summer, because this is Rome. And if you complain, a granny will scold you with a proverb older than the Appian Way. Now and then, someone passes you a cup of defrutum boiled down grape syrup, sticky and strong, diluted with water or even milk. It's the ancient equivalent of a sugar rush. And the kids love it. You try it. And it's like drinking candied plums, sharp and sweet and a little bit illicit. A poet calls it liquid summer. You call it teeth-rotting joy. And go back for seconds. The vendor gives you a wink, if you can still walk after 3 cups. You're not doing it right. Of course, not every Roman is after sweetness. Some prefer Cervicia barley beer, imported from the provinces. Cloudy, yeasty, tasting a bit like someone made bread and forgot to finish. The locals joke it's barbarian juice, but after a morning in the sun, you start to see the appeal. A priest in the corner dunks his bread in beer, looking extremely pleased with himself. You make a note to try it later. Around festival time, the streets are awash with spiced wine, warmed in bronze kettles, perfumed with cinnamon, pepper, and maybe a splash of rosewater if the cellar's feeling extravagant. The fumes rise in ghostly curls, blending with incense from the temples and the distant tang of roasting meat. Drink it too fast, and you'll spend the afternoon in a philosophical debate with your own feet. Even the water cellars, often overlooked, have their tricks. Some peddle snowmelt mixed with mint and a little salt, perfect for the athlete who just lost his sandals in a foot race. Others serve water poured through fig leaves or chilled in amphorae sunk deep in the Tiber's cool mud. Because sometimes the best refreshment is the simplest. The sun climbs, the crowd swells, and the drinks keep flowing. You sip, slurp, and laugh, feeling the city buzz not just from politics and gossip, but from the gentle, cheerful blur of shared thirst. You realize the Romans weren't just feeding their bellies. They were hydrating their history, cup by cup, splash by splash, joke by joke. And just as you finish your last drop, the bell of a nearby temple tolls, the city pauses, and for a breathless instant, every throat is wet, every heart is cool, and every citizen from senator to slave is united by the simple, ancient act of a drink shared under the Roman sun, a hush, and breathe. You wander out of the noisy Subura, brushing imaginary crumbs from your toga, and stumble straight into one of those back alley markets where every stall is an explosion of color, sugar, and slightly questionable food safety standards. The sun slants low now, burning orange on your shoulders, and the air is thick with the scent of honey, so sweet you swear it could lure bees straight from Carthage. Rome may have invented the world's first shopping mall, but you're not here for togas or imported glass. No. Tonight you're on the hunt for something that would make any modern dentist shudder ancient Roman junk food. Forget kale salads and chia puddings. What you want is something sticky, crunchy, and absolutely guaranteed to rot your teeth before Saturnalia. Here, you can't walk 2 steps without bumping into baskets overflowing with dried figs, dark and wrinkled as a senator's conscience, piled high like little treasures from the gods. Street vendors hawk them by the handful, tossing them in small paper cones made from yesterday's shopping lists, while children sneak them into their tunics when the stall keeper's back is turned. You grab one, feeling the soft, grainy skin, and bite down to taste the chewy center intense, almost floral, a little wild. The sugar rush is immediate, like being smacked with a Venusian love spell, and you're suddenly sure you could sprint to the Circus Maximus and back without breaking a sweat. Roman figs aren't just a snack, they're ancient currency. If you were a kid and your parents promised you a treat for finishing your recitation of Virgil, this is what you got. Even the Emperor Augustus was said to be fond of them, popping them in his mouth between meetings about, running the known world. Figs are also full of little seeds that get stuck in your teeth, so you spend half your time picking at your molars, looking every bit as sophisticated as a gladiator trying to dig out an arrowhead. But figs are just the opening act. Wander a little deeper, and you're caught in a syrupy ambush. Here comes the honey cart. The vendor, an old woman with a face like a walnut and hands quick as a pickpocket, offers you a sticky glob of Dulce domestica dates stuffed with nuts, then rolled in wildflower honey until they glisten in the sun. You hesitate briefly, politely, as if you're considering the calorie count, then pop one in your mouth. Boom. The flavor is so rich you nearly see stars sweet. Yes, but also with a hint of smoke from the wood-fired oven, and a dusting of cracked pepper for that classic Roman kick. Did the ancients invent the energy bar? Probably. Did they invent the dentist's worst nightmare? Most definitely. You wipe your fingers, but everything you touch feels a little sticky. So you give up and join a small crowd circling the next stall. The air here is thick with the smell of roasting hazelnuts, sugar, and a sort of spicy, resinous tang melted pine pitch. Maybe the snack is nucate, little honey nut clusters rolled up in leaves to keep the bees away. As if bees ever needed a formal invitation, Roman street kids go wild for these, launching into elaborate negotiations, swapping 3 half-eaten nucatae for a slightly larger date. You try one crunchy, nutty, with a faint bitterness that lingers in the back of your throat. You try not to think about the fact that pine resin is also used to waterproof ships. And then, just when you think you've tasted every ancient sugar bomb in Rome, you spot the pièce de résistance globuli. These are the Roman answer to donuts, minus the guilt, or so you tell yourself. The cook stands over a bubbling cauldron, deftly dropping spoonfuls of dough into hot olive oil until they puff up, golden and delicious, then fishing them out and tossing them in a glaze of honey and poppy seeds. You take a bite and nearly float away crisp on the outside, warm and soft on the inside, with the honey forming glassy shards that crunch between your teeth. A philosopher nearby tries to quote Seneca about moderation, but he's got honey on his chin and nobody's listening. All around you, the market is alive with the laughter of children, the shouts of vendors, and the ever-present hum of gossip. Did you hear about Flavia? She ate 12 figs and had visions of Bacchus all night. My cousin's friend claims the honey here cures a broken heart, or at least softens it enough to survive another Roman winter. Even the stray dogs are licking spilled syrup from the cobbles, their tails wagging with conspiratorial delight. You realize, as you brush poppy seeds from your lap and try to unstick your sandals from the stone, that ancient Romans weren't so different after all. They had a word for everything dulcis for sweet, cibus for food, gula for gluttony. And while their emperors may have been plotting conquests and drafting laws, everyone, rich or poor, young or old, could agree on one thing: life was better with a little sugar. So you stand there, slightly dazed, belly pleasantly full, and think maybe this is what all the philosophers missed. Maybe the true secret of Roman happiness wasn't to be found in the Forum or the Senate, but right here, in a sticky handful of honey-soaked dates and the laughter of a city that never really slept. You close your eyes, take one more fig, and let the world fade to a soft, golden hush. A pause, a breath. Rome, sweet and humming, drifts on. You wander into the heart of the Subura, Rome's legendary neighborhood of noise and appetite, where the stalls overflow with sticky temptations, and your hand is soon dusted with sugar and the daydreams of 1,000 Roman children. The moment you turn the corner, it's as if you've stumbled into a world ruled entirely by dessert. The market buzzes, alive with voices that bounce from honey merchant to fruit hawker, to the woman selling cakes so sweet they practically hum with energy. Here in the Sweet Tooth's market, the air is thick, yes, actually sticky with the syrupy tang of dates and the bright zip of citrus, carried on a breeze that tastes like late summer and overripe plums. Your sandals squelch slightly on stones glazed with last night's juice and today's optimism. You brush past a boy licking his fingers, his cheeks smudged with the unmistakable sheen of honey, a badge of honor among young Romans who consider themselves gladiators in the daily battle for treats. A vendor, arms dusted with flour and pride, waves a spatula and calls out, "Libum, libum," as if naming a magical incantation. Libum is not just any cake, you quickly learn, but a little loaf of cheese and flour, drizzled with honey so golden you wonder if it was squeezed from the sun itself. You watch as she pulls a batch from the embers, their scent a heady blend of comfort and ambition, as if breakfast and dessert had made a secret pact. Next door, another stall boasts fig cakes, dried figs mashed, rolled in sesame, and pressed into cakes that seem designed for contraband snacking between lessons on Cicero and how not to annoy your father. If you close your eyes, you taste the whole Mediterranean warm, sun-struck, and just a little wild. A girl, nose wrinkled with concentration, trades a copper coin for a tiny fruit tart. She bites in. Honey drips down her wrist, and you realize that in this moment, dessert is less a treat and more a state of mind. You're not alone, either. Housewives with sharp elbows elbow past, philosophers debating which cake best represents the nature of virtue spoiler, it's probably the one with extra honey. And a chorus of children stage mock negotiations for candied nuts, wielding their best pleading eyes against the iron resolve of the nut seller nearby. A crate of apples glows in the light, some red, some green, some tart, some forbidden. At least according to a local matron who mutters that too much fruit leads to restless dreams. You file that away for later, right alongside the knowledge that honey-dipped walnuts can cure almost anything except a broken heart. The honey vendor, his beard sticky, his smile sticky too, scoops up a little cup for you. "Roman gold," he says with a wink, as if you've just been initiated into an ancient secret society. You taste it, warm and floral, with a depth that makes you think of wildflowers and bees arguing over poetry. For a moment, you forget the dust and the noise and the laundry list of chores waiting elsewhere in the city. All that exists is this bite, this sweetness, this ancient whisper in Rome. Even the gods had a sweet tooth, and just as you're licking the last of the honey from your fingers, a new scent weaves its way through the crowd: roasted chestnuts, their skins crackling in a basket over coals. The chestnut seller, eyes shrewd as a street fox, flicks one toward a giggling child. Hot, careful, he warns. Grinning as the boy juggles the prize from palm to palm, laughter ringing out over the low hum of afternoon bargains. The heat of the chestnut warms your hand, the sweet earthy flavor lingers on your tongue, and suddenly, you understand the true heart of Roman junk food. It's not just about eating, but about belonging, about trading smiles, sharing sweets, and finding your place in a city that never stops hungering for more. Beneath the noise, beneath the games and gossip, you sense it, a quiet, glowing thread that ties everyone together, as if every honey cake and every candied fig is a tiny declaration that life, even in the dusty back streets of Empire, should taste just a little bit sweet. The sunlight slants golden now, the shadows lengthen, and the market begins its slow, sticky retreat. Vendors pack away their wares, children gather their sticky treasures, and the air, for a moment, is gentle with the promise of one more treat before dusk. You pocket a fig cake, just in case. You never know what the night will bring. A hush, a short breath, and the market fades into memory, leaving only a smudge of honey on your palm and the faintest taste of wildflowers lingering at the corners of your mouth. You step into a shadowed alley just as the sun slides behind the rooftops, following the echo of laughter, and stumble upon a traveling food cart peddling wheels of cheese, cups of tart wine, and the pure, undeniable thrill of eating standing up. There's a low hum here, a kind of conspiratorial energy that pulses along the cobblestones. You slip into the crowd, a mix of dock workers with arms like bread loaves, chatty laundresses balancing baskets on their hips, and two old men arguing over whether the best cheese comes from Etruria or Campania, as if this question has ever been settled in all of Roman history. The cart at the center of it all is something to behold, rickety but proud. Painted a color that was probably a vibrant red sometime back in the days of Augustus, but now resembles the memory of a tomato. It wobbles dangerously as the proprietor, a woman with a braid so long it might be used as a garrote in the right circumstances, doles out wedges of cheese with a knife that looks as though it has stories to tell. You feel the cool heft of a fresh cheese wedge in your palm, its rind crackling under your thumb, and the scent is sharp, tangy, and a little grassy. You don't eat cheese like this in silence. It demands company, demands a little wine to cut through the richness. And so, you join the cluster of customers. At the next stop, the communal wine barrel, complete with a spigot and a row of battered cups. The wine isn't Grand Villa stuff, no Falernian here, no heady vintages aged to the music of lyres, but a sturdy, honest, tart liquid that tastes like the countryside filtered through 100 clay jars and just a touch of city grit. You sip, wince, and catch a wink from the server, a 20-something with grape-stained fingers and a smile that says he's heard every joke about Roman wine and still finds them funny. Around you, people are dipping hunks of coarse bread into oil and salt, tearing off bites to wrap around slices of garlicky sausage, trading gossip about gladiators' love lives and which fishmonger waters down his anchovy paste. You ever try the cheese from the Sabine Hills? Asks a man with a chin full of crumbs. Before you can answer, he thrusts a morsel at you, salty, creamy, powerful enough to make you close your eyes for a moment and forget every bad meal you've ever had. The city seems to pulse with flavor here. Children dart between legs with sticky fingers, clutching honey cakes, while street musicians tune their lyres and croon songs about heroes, heartache, and the time someone's uncle mistook a wheel of cheese for a lost helmet in the bathhouse. Overhead, washing lines flap like banners, and somewhere, someone shouts about a missing chicken, prompting a wave of laughter and a rooster's indignant crow in reply. A pack of young men swagger by, trading bites of something fried, maybe cheese, maybe fish, Maybe some wild experimental food that no reputable Roman matron would serve at a dinner party. The air is laced with the perfume of roasting garlic, the sharpness of vinegar, the heavy sweetness of fermenting grapes. And you breathe it all in, feeling as much a part of the city as the crumbling bricks beneath your sandals. You lean against a wall, letting the sounds and smells of Rome swirl around you, your stomach full but already plotting the next snack. For a brief moment, as the lamplighters pass with their torches, sparking little suns along the alleyway, you feel the city's ancient heartbeat steady, chaotic, and fueled by nothing more and nothing less than a really good hunk of cheese and a cup of honest wine. You stand still, a little dizzy from flavor and noise and the sheer, relentless life of it all. Then you exhale, and the alley exhales with you a hush, and breathe. You slip through lamp-lit alleys as the city winds down, and the real junk food magic flickers to life, street corner vendors, shadowy stalls, and midnight aromas that make your stomach growl louder than a senator in an empty Senate. You find yourself wandering long after the city's official business has given way to the hush which always follows the last shout of the fishmonger and the clatter of the baker's pans. The sky above Rome has gone from a brassy afternoon to velvet blue. Freckled with a few determined stars, the gods are always watching. But some nights, you suspect. They look away for a moment and let mortals do as they please. By day, the forum's busy. By night, it's all yours. And the marble columns loom like ghostly sentinels over a scene more secret and delicious than anything written in the history scrolls. The air now is heavy with roasting meat and something even more tempting fresh. Crackling Libum cheese buns, still steaming from the portable brazier of a patient vendor whose name you'll never know, but whose face you'll remember every time your stomach growls at midnight. He's an older man, with skin like sun-baked leather and a voice soft as the dawn, who sits cross-legged beside a tray of soft, creamy buns, each brushed with honey and sprinkled with just enough poppy seed to make you feel slightly daring. For you, he says, eyes crinkling, you nod, and he grins. Eat it while it's hot. Eat it like you've just conquered Gaul. You try, but the honey runs down your chin. And he chuckles, handing you a rag. If you ever doubted the power of late-night junk food to erase a bad day or a bad emperor, doubt no more. The shadows of Rome's narrowest alleys, the ones that even stray cats avoid for fear of drunken gladiators or overzealous philosophers, are alive with the sense of snacks made for those who can't or won't sleep. You pass a cart selling nukatai candied nuts, roasted until the shells crack and tossed with a dusting of cumin and coriander, sweet enough to lure even a stern matron from her dreams. A couple in tunics, clearly tipsy on watered wine, giggle as they feed each other sticky clusters, pretending to negotiate but really just trying to get the biggest chunk, not far off. Under the soft yellow glow of an oil lamp, another vendor carves slices from a Lucanica sausage, the peppery scent swirling out into the night, making your mouth water. He gives you a wink and gestures at his cutting board, loaded with small bites, some for paying customers, some for friendly banter. A few coins buys you a slice that's so packed with fennel, black pepper, and wild herbs. You almost forget how much you're sweating under your borrowed cloak. The sausage sizzles as it hits a shallow pan, and the oil leaps up in tiny, staccato fireworks, carrying the promise of flavor deep into your nose. You savor the taste, sharp and rich, and for a moment, it feels like Rome itself is whispering its secrets through every bite. Overhead, the moon's a silver coin, high and indifferent. But down here on the cobbles, the world is full of warmth, laughter, and the kind of junk food no emperor would ever dare list in his official memoirs. You pass a girl with a basket of globy little fried dough balls drenched in honey and dusted with crushed poppy seeds, her eyes as bright as the treats she peddles. Sweet for sweet dreams she offers, and you can't resist. One bite. And you understand why Ovid wrote poetry, nothing inspires like a mouthful of sugar after midnight. The honey sticks to your lips, your fingers, and maybe, just maybe, your heart, every corner you turn. There's another surprise. A young baker, hair white with flour and dreams, doles out panis plebeius, the bread of the common people, flat and chewy, flecked with caraway or whatever seeds he could snatch from the spice market. He winks, tossing you an extra chunk. Bread for your journey, he says, and you smile, stuffing it in your pouch, already planning a snack for later. When you're trudging home past the sleeping temples and quiet fountains, somewhere near the Tiber, you spot a ragtag crowd huddled around a grill. The vendor here specializes in botulus, blood sausage, and he's the loudest man on the block, shouting the merits of his wares to anyone who will listen. Stronger than a soldier, cheaper than a priest, he crows. You watch as he ladles thick slices onto a slab of bread, handing them off to sailors, laborers, and the occasional adventurous noble in disguise. The taste salty, earthy, a little spicy, a little sweet like Rome herself. Complex and utterly impossible to explain in polite company. As you drift farther, past sleeping doorways and the soft shuffle of a guard's sandals, you find a table loaded with olives of every shape and hue, bobbing in vinegar and oil, glistening in the lamplight. You pop one in your mouth, and the brine hits your tongue, sharp and bracing as a bucket of Tiber water on a hot day. Wakes you up, doesn't it? The vendor laughs, and you nod, licking your fingers, already reaching for another. The night deepens. Somewhere a dog barks, somewhere a drunk stumbles over a barrel. You catch the faint notes of a flute, the rhythm of feet lovers, thieves, and bakers all caught in the midnight tide. Even in the darkness, the city is alive, fed by its own restless hunger, soothed by bites and sips and the thousand tiny rituals of snacking. You finish your last globy, honey warm on your tongue, and look up. Above you, the old city sighs and shifts, its dreams carried on the breeze, its stories etched in crumbs and laughter. Rome's midnight junk food, never noble, never elegant, but always enough to fill your hands, your heart, and that secret, hungry place where history and appetite meet. And with that last mouthful, you pause, the city, the food, the night, each a flavor, each a memory wrapped in silence. You breathe, you listen, you step forward, ready for whatever snack, whatever story. The shadows of Rome will serve up next. You push open a warped wooden door, and the hum of conversation, Greek, Latin, a dash of Egyptian. The universal language of stomachs growling rolls over you like warm wine on a chilly night. Here you are, a few footsteps away from the bustling main street and its whirlwind of carts, clatter, and cursing. Stepping into a world where everyone is both guest and gossip, and where the concept of junk food takes on new meaning with every handful. The tavern is dim and smoky, lit by oil lamps that flicker like the eyelids of patrons on their third cup of whatever passes for wine tonight. The walls, if you could see them through the haze, are a patchwork of faded murals, Dionysus with a nose missing, Hercules flexing, some nameless gladiator with a crooked grin, each probably the work of a drunken artist paid in leftover stew. You're barely inside before the noise hits you. Not just the chatter, but the scrape of clay mugs, the crackle of roasting chestnuts, the sharp ring of a lyre played by someone whose musical ambitions clearly outstrip their talent. The air is a wild brew pungent from spilled wine, sweet from roasting chickpeas, just a little bit sour from the previous day's unwashed tunics. If you breathe deep, you catch the tang of garum, Rome's infamous fermented fish sauce, which seeps into everything with the persistence of tax collectors and lost loves. The tavern keeper, broad as a barrel and twice as likely to roll his eyes, waves you over to the counter. You can order wine, of course, and it arrives as red as spilled secrets, cut with enough water to keep you upright, but not enough to dull the gossip. But tonight, you're here for the food, the stuff that keeps Rome sleepless, restless, and tipsy, coming back for more. First, the snack bowls, olives wrinkled, briny and fat, glistening with oil, pile up next to bowls of salted lupini beans. The Roman answer to peanuts at the bar. You pop one into your mouth, and it's a small, defiant burst of bitterness, chased with salt. Next comes a basket of fried dormice. Yes, dormice. The kind of delicacy you've heard senators debate as if it's more important than empire. But here, it's a snack for the masses, dusted with pepper and honey, crispy on the outside and tender inside, a little odd, a little daring, a lot addictive. somewhere. A tipsy merchant is waving a stick of salsam, the Roman equivalent of beef jerky, cured with spices and just enough mystery to make you question your choices. There are skewers of grilled sausages, their skins snapping with fennel and coriander, and a steaming pot of pottage thick with barley, cabbage, lentils, and a fistful of yesterday's luck. Your neighbor at the counter, a wiry old sailor with a voice like gravel and hands that never stop moving, offers you a bite of his moritum. This is a garlicky cheese spread, whipped with herbs and olive oil, smeared onto rough brown bread that looks like it might double as a weapon in a tavern brawl. You taste it, and it explodes across your tongue, sharp, creamy, with a hit of bitter greens and the unmistakable aroma of wild garlic that will follow you all the way home. Keeps the wolves away, the sailor winks, and the in-laws. You catch sight of a plate loaded with stuffed dates, little bombs of sweetness, filled with nuts, honey, and the faintest dusting of pepper. The barmaid, nimble as a cat and twice as likely to swipe a coin, brings over a tray of boiled quail eggs dusted with ground mustard seed. Pop one, and you get a tiny, fiery jolt, just enough to make you sit up and notice the world spinning around you. A riot of languages, jokes, and hands waving for more. The table behind you erupts in laughter as someone bites into a libel. A honey cheesecake meant for the gods, but quite popular with mortals, especially after 3 cups of wine. The crust is soft, the cheese tangy, the honey drizzled like a late apology sweet. Golden, and a little sticky on your fingers. Someone tries to dunk a crust of bread in a leftover stew and misses, splattering your shoe. You both laugh after all. What's a stain or two among friends and strangers in a place where dignity is as optional as the 5th cup of wine? There is music, or at least the suggestion of it, threading through the noise a flute, a drum, someone whistling off key. Stories are swapped with every refill. Did you hear about the baker's apprentice who mistook salt for sugar? Do you remember when Gaius tried to sell Egyptian dates that turned out to be olives in disguise? Someone launches into a wild tale about a senator's scandal involving figs, but the end gets lost in a toast to the goddess Fortuna. You find yourself grinning, cheeks warm, shoulders loose, as the hours slide by in a gentle blur. If you linger long enough, you'll see the city's social classes begin to blur. Two, here, in the soft lamplight, the line between citizen and slave, merchant and mercenary, is dissolved in shared bread, laughter, and the desperate clamor for one more bowl. If you please, someone's purse goes missing, but it turns up wedged behind a bench, only slightly emptier than before. A pair of lovers argue over who ate the last stuffed fig, then make up with a stolen kiss and a shared cup of diluted wine. The tavern is a living, breathing map of Rome's soul, rowdy, generous, a little chaotic, always hungry. It's where deals are made, friendships forged, and rumors spread like honey on hot bread. Every so often, the door bangs open, letting in a draft of cool air and a new story. And always, there's another snack to try, another plate to pass, another friend to meet in the delicious, democratic chaos of Rome's eternal snack counter. And when you finally slip back outside, blinking in the starlight, your breath fogs in the night air, your pockets a little lighter, your heart a little fuller, and your hands still sticky with honey and the laughter of strangers. Hush. The city waits. The next bite is always just around the corner. You drift into the shadows beneath a tangle of torchlight, where the smells of frying oil, old wine, and pickled fish are strong enough to rattle your sandals. And you realize the Roman nightlife was less about elegance, more about edible adventure. You might have pictured Rome's evenings as quiet affairs, gentle lamplight, whispered poetry, the distant strum of a lyre, but no. Friend. The real action is out here, in the noisy lanes just past sunset, where food and chaos run hand in hand like a pair of delinquent twins. You squeeze into the jostling crowd, your ears bombarded with the calls of vendors, the clatter of dice in a back alley, and the sharp, greasy hiss of oil in pans that have probably never known the gentle touch of soap. Torches sputter, half the city's stray dogs bark their opinions on philosophy, and the scent that curls around you is unmistakable fried street snacks. If you've ever doubted the power of hot oil to lure a crowd, you've never seen a Roman frigatorius, that's the snack fryer, the Roman MVP, a small, smoky booth where every edible object gets its turn in the bubbling cauldron. You press closer, catching a glimpse of what's on offer. Slices of dormouse, stuffed with spiced pork and honey, sizzle until their fur would have curled if it hadn't been plucked away earlier by an apprentice with surprisingly delicate hands. The cook, broad-shouldered and wild-eyed, grins as he tosses them in a sprinkle of pepper and dried mint, then wraps the morsels in rough linen to keep the heat in and the flies out. No, this is not for the faint of heart, nor for anyone squeamish about rodents. But don't worry, plenty of Romans skip the dormouse and go straight for the next favorite deep-fried chickpea fritters, golden and steaming, dusted with garum-soaked parsley. They crunch between your teeth with a satisfying snap, leaving your lips tingling from salt and oil and a burst of mystery spice that could be cumin, or could be whatever the vendor swept off his shelf that morning. Nearby, a pair of old men argue over a battered jar of pickled cabbage, so pungent you're pretty sure the brine could etch a mosaic. Pickling, after all, is Rome's great answer to leftovers. In a world where ice is more valuable than gold, fermentation is both a necessity and an art form. You see rows of crocks lined up on wooden shelves, turnips and onions and little fish, all bobbing in vinegar or brine, all promising to last until the next harvest or the next imperial scandal, whichever comes first. One vendor offers you a skewer of pickled lark hearts, very good for digestion, he insists, with a wink, while another boasts a jar of onions so sharp they make your eyes water just from looking. Of course, what's a night out without a drink in your hand? Here the Romans truly let loose. You sidle up to a bustling thermopolium, where clay cups are filled with whatever the landlord can buy, cheap Molson wine with honey, watered wine, wine mixed with herbs and the odd root, and for those who fancy living dangerously, Pasca, the soldier's favorite, made from sour wine and vinegar. It sounds like punishment, but the regulars drink it like ambrosia, swapping stories about gladiators, crop failures, and whose neighbor's goat is the most melodious. There's even a bucket of snow being slowly lowered into a jug of red, a rare treat ice harvested from distant mountains, melting as quickly as the drinker's patience. The music rises, a loose jumble of pipes and hand drums, and you find yourself swaying between booths, sampling a little of everything. You bite into a honey cake, so dense it nearly snaps your tooth. You sample figs stuffed with walnuts and black pepper, a taste that makes you blink with delight and confusion. You pass by a group of young men, sharing something unidentifiable on a stick. Was it once a fish? Or is it just a very crispy vegetable? No one knows. And after a few swigs of wine, no one cares. Everywhere you look, there's someone laughing, shouting, eating, or haggling. A child runs by, trailing a string of half-eaten dates. Two lovers bicker over a shared bowl of fried cheese curds, the argument ending only when a passing stranger grabs a handful and sprints away into the crowd. The air is thick with stories, with secrets traded for pastries, with the promise of another bite just around the corner. You wander a little further, until the noise softens and the crowd thins. The smells linger sweet, sharp, and impossibly ancient, as if each flavor carries a fragment of all the other nights that have come before. You can't help but smile, wiping your hands on your tunic, a little grease shining in the torchlight. This is Roman junk food, wild, inventive, sometimes unrecognizable, but always alive with laughter and chants. Somewhere, a lyre player strums a lazy chord. You pause, savoring the hush between the notes. Then, with one last bite of something fried and deliciously ambiguous, you let the city swallow you again, heart beating in time with the endless, edible night. You wander into the tangled heart of a bustling papana, where the air is thick with garlic, scandal, and the sharp, unmistakable tang of Garum Rome's most infamous sauce, while locals argue over the proper way to drown their fried pastries and the latest rumors about the emperor's love life. You're barely through the battered wooden door before you're assaulted by an aroma that's part salty ocean, part wild herb garden, and, just for good measure, a whisper of something that might be fermented anchovy if you're lucky, or last week's accident if you're not. Welcome to the saucy underbelly of Rome's culinary soul, where the real flavor isn't found on the marble tables of the wealthy, but right here, ladled into chipped terracotta bowls, splashed across greasy fingers, and shared with the kind of intimacy usually reserved for secrets and pillow talk. You edge past a pair of gamblers hunched over a backgammon board, their voices alternating between curses and the sing-song of culinary debate, too much liquamen. Gaius! You'll be sweating like a salt mine by sundown. It's not enough unless it makes your nose run. No one's offended after all. Here in the Papana, slander about sauces is as common as spilled wine. The barkeep, a lean fellow with biceps like overstuffed sausages, waves you forward, brandishing a spoon the size of a child's arm. Try this, he insists, dolloping a mysterious brown gold goo onto a wedge of still warm fried dough. Garum, the pride of Pompeii. Made fresh this week, don't listen to what they say about the amphora in the alley. You oblige, because refusing hospitality in a Roman snack shop is like slapping Jupiter not recommended. The taste well. You brace yourself for brine, but what you get is depth. A tidal wave of salt and umami, fish and sunshine, all mellowed by a drizzle of honey and the tiniest flicker of coriander seed. You blink, it's not bad. You manage, which is apparently the magic phrase, because suddenly everyone at the counter wants you to try their favorite combination. There's muria, a pungent brine pressed from pickled fish bones and used to baptize almost anything that isn't quick enough to run away. Da frutum, a syrup of boiled grape must that sticks to your teeth like a guilty secret. And sapa, even thicker, so sweet it makes your cheeks ache, poured over everything from cheese fritters to grilled apples. A woman with arms tattooed in blue woad, she claims to have been a gladiator, though the truth is as slippery as eel slides you a battered plate with honey cakes libum. She calls them swimming in defrutum. Don't eat too many, she warns, or you'll dream of Bacchus and never want to wake up. You take a bite and the sticky, perfumed syrup clings to your tongue, chasing away any lingering taste of fish and replacing it with a dizzying rush of sugar and sun-ripened grapes around you. The Papana is alive with debate, which is superior garum from Hispania, Muria from Alexandria, or some dubious home-brewed concoction hawked by a cousin twice removed. Someone claims to have smuggled in a jar of true garum from the Bay of Naples. Aged for 2 years in amphorae sealed with pine resin and a pinch of bay leaf. It's liquid gold, he declares, only to be jeered by an old man in the corner. Gold, it's more like Augustus's bathwater. The conversation spins inevitably into politics, as all good Roman chatter does. Someone whispers about a senator's wife who spends more on imported spices for her garum than on her own dowry. Another swears he saw the emperor himself disguised in a common cloak. Of course, buying anchovy paste in the Forum at midnight. It's impossible to tell what's true, but that's half the fun. The rest is just listening to the rhythm of voices, punctuated by the slap of knives on bread, the occasional shout when a gambler wins or loses big, and the always present sound of sauce being ladled onto something, anything, everything. You notice a cat slinking beneath the tables, its nose twitching as it searches for a dropped morsel of fried smelt or a splash of honey from someone's careless hand. The animal's presence is tolerated, even encouraged. A good mouser is worth more than a bad cook. And besides, cats don't gossip, they just eat. You envy its simplicity, and for a moment, you wish you could join it on all fours, scavenging among the crumbs and the chaos, blissfully ignorant of social rank and the never-ending question of whether this batch of garum will be the one to finally kill you or just make you stronger. But you're a guest here, and as such, you're offered the full gauntlet of Roman condiments. A new bowl appears this one bright green, thanks to a mash of rue, mint, and pine nuts pounded with olive oil into something halfway between pesto and magic. For fried dormouse, the barkeep intones solemnly, but honestly, it's good on anything except tax forms. The taste is sharp, grassy, and completely unlike anything you've ever known. For a second, you glimpse the Mediterranean, blue and wild beyond the city walls, the promise of summer picnics and forgotten gods. There are sauces for every season, every appetite, and every scandal. Sow's udders stuffed with pine nuts and served with spicy mustard. Sweet cheese tarts bathed in honey and sprinkled with black pepper. Pickled walnuts, sharp and briny, crunched between mouthfuls of barley cake. And always, always, more garum, sometimes so strong it makes your eyes water. Sometimes mellowed with herbs and wine until it's almost delicate. The people around you are as layered as the sauces themselves. A retired legionary claims to have eaten every kind of garum from Britannia to Cyrene. A baker's apprentice argues that the secret to his master's honey cakes is a dash of cumin in the syrup. An old woman with hands like tree roots insists that no sauce can save a bad cook, and no good cook needs sauce anyway. You listen, you taste, you learn, and above all, you laugh. It's noisy, it's messy, it's glorious. The papana is Rome's beating heart, and the sauces slanderous, scandalous, sometimes suspicious are its lifeblood. The next time you dip a finger into something salty or sweet, remember this: every drop is history, and every bite is a story, for now. You lean back, belly warm, senses swirling, and let the hubbub fade into the background, a hush, and breathe. You stroll down to the muddy Tiber as twilight bleeds into indigo, the last rays slanting across driftwood, stray sandals, and a stray dog with more charisma than hygiene. And the city's snacking spirit gently exhales, ready to turn old bread and hope into something golden. The noise of the city dims as you leave the crowded streets and wind your way through the echoing stone arch of an ancient bridge. Every surface worn as smooth as the back of your hand. Down here, the Tiber is less a river and more a slow, muddy sigh, lapping at the banks, carrying secrets and the odd amphora shard on its broad, brown back. You feel the hush, the collective exhale of Rome after a day's bickering, bargaining, and boisterous gobbling. And yet, down by the water, you are never alone. This is the city's after-hours kitchen, where the culinary outcasts and midnight philosophers gather to squeeze the last drop of flavor from whatever the day forgot. You settle onto a flat rock still warm from the sun, shoes off, toes squishing into the silt. Beside you, an old woman in a tunic, 3 shades past respectable, is wringing out a linen napkin. She unwraps her supper, a small loaf of bread, gone as hard as a senator's heart, a hunk of goat cheese, and, miracle of miracles, a handful of olives left over from the market. She glances at you with the canny look of someone who's seen 100 riverbank sunsets and twice as many emperors come and go. "You hungry?" she asks, as if the answer might shift the course of Roman history. You nod. She tears her bread in half, one piece for her, one for you. It tastes of patience and dust, and the surprising sweetness of a shared meal. A ragged crowd has gathered potters, apprentices, the city's unofficial dog catchers, and a flute player with more holes in his cloak than his instrument. They aren't feasting, they're scrounging, but as the last food stalls close and the aroma of roasted chickpeas floats down from the bridge, they make something out of almost nothing. Someone pulls out a battered pot, and the collective leftovers: bean paste, last night's lentils, the crumbs from a cake that never made it home get tossed in, swirled with river water, and heated over a fire that smells of rosemary, olive wood, and the faintest hope. You join in, hands sticky with honey from a shared fig tart. There's no ceremony, but plenty of jokes about emperors with weak stomachs, senators who couldn't tell a cabbage from a coin, bakers who pass off yesterday's bread as tomorrow's delicacy. Laughter bubbles up, hungry but content. Someone tries to recite a bit of Virgil and fails, but the group applauds anyway. The stars come out, shy at first, then brighter, reflected in the river's sluggish surface, making even the muddy water seem almost magical. A cart trundles by, above, the vendor's call fading, the last fried fish wrapped in vine leaves for some lucky straggler, down by the river. There's a moment of pure stillness, just you, a city full of appetites, and the sound of water on stone. The city's famous 9 hills are cloaked in dusk. The torches are lit in the distance, and somewhere, a stray dog nuzzles your foot, then collapses, belly full, under the table. You look at your companions, no longer strangers, not quite friends. Bound by crumbs and common hunger, a single amphora of cheap wine is passed around. sharp and sour and perfect for washing down the taste of lentils and ash and ambition. In this moment, you understand what Rome's junk food was really about, not just the taste or even the novelty, but the way each meal, no matter how humble, knits the city together, rich and poor, citizen and outsider, snacker and scavenger, all dreaming of something just a little sweeter. You rise, dusting crumbs from your tunic, the flavors lingering in your mouth long after the last bite. Above, the city settles, but the hunger for tomorrow's flavors never quite disappears. Here, beneath the stars and the city's watchful hills, Rome's day ends with a joke, a song, and the softest crunch of a crust shared in the dark. A hush falls. The fire dies. You breathe in the memory, then let it go. You hold your breath as the unmistakable, eyebrow-raising aroma of garum slinks through the alley, trailing salt and something far less poetic, and realize the Romans had a taste for food that bites back long before umami had an Instagram account. There it is. You know it before you see it. The legendary whiff, a blend of tidal flat, forgotten lunchbox, and the kind of salty mystery that can turn even the boldest street dog into a philosopher. Garum, the sauce of emperors, gladiators, and pretty much anyone with a strong nose and a stronger stomach. No Roman junk food odyssey is complete without this strange, beloved brew. You spot the source a modest stall tucked between a public fountain and a wall scribbled with election graffiti, "Vote for Marcus." Friend of fish. A place where commerce and culinary courage intertwine. A big-bellied vendor, his tunic proudly flecked with the evidence of many fish, stands guard over rows of amphorae stoppered with wax and rope. He's half salesman, half priest, dispensing this ancient condiment with the gravity of someone who's seen what happens when a lid slips. You edge closer, curiosity battling self-preservation, and he lifts a ladle, its surface shimmering with brownish gold, thick with promise and, let's be honest, just a hint of dread. "You want a taste?" he asks, voice low and confidential, as if inviting you into a cult, before you can say no. He splashes a few drops onto a hunk of coarse bread and gestures for you to try. The first bite is a revelation. Sharp, salty, rich in a way that's almost meaty, yet undeniably oceanic. As if Poseidon himself decided to crash your picnic. It tingles at the back of your throat, wakes your tongue, and makes you aware of every cell in your face. You cough. The vendor grins. "Garum," he intones, "is the soul of Rome. It makes cabbage taste like a feast. It makes bread taste like victory. And truly, you feel as though you've survived a trial and emerged a little braver. Around you, regulars dip sausages, cold lentil cakes, even figs into their little cups of garum. Children grimace, then return for more, daring each other to take a second helping. An old woman, her hair wrapped in a faded scarf, pours a dash onto a slice of roasted turnip and declares it almost as good as the emperor's cook. But don't tell the emperor. You watch as a laborer with dust on his sandals mixes garum with olive oil and vinegar, creating a quick and dirty dipping sauce for leftover fried fish, a move that would make a modern chef blink, then furiously scribble in their notebook. It's not just a condiment, you realize, but a unifier. In a city where wealth and status are measured in togas, garum is the one luxury that crosses every boundary, rich or poor, slave or senator. Everyone lines up for a taste. And every jar tells a story. The best garum is made from the guts of mackerel, salted and left to ferment under the Mediterranean sun until it becomes both sauce and legend. There are rival brands. 2-1 Amphora boasts the mark of Pompeii. Another claims to be from Carthage, and a third, rather optimistically, is labeled Imperial Blend. The vendor, naturally, insists his is aged longer than a senator's last speech. There are, of course, secrets. Some say a pinch of coriander or lovage is added to the mix for extra kick. Others claim the very best garum comes from the last press, thick and cloudy, reserved for feasts and bribes. Occasionally, a brave soul tries to make their own. But the neighbors always complain. And soon enough, an official with a clothespin on his nose arrives to shut it down. Let the professionals stink up the city. He sighs, scribbling a fine. You take another bite, this time with a wedge of hard cheese and a few olives suddenly. The flavors dance together, singing of sun, sea, an afternoon spent in wild, delicious abandon. You think of the soldiers on the frontier, smuggling tiny jars of garum to remind them of home, of slaves sneaking a taste when the overseer isn't looking, of merchants arguing over whose shipment is less likely to cause an incident. You wonder how many ancient love letters began with a gift of garum, and how many breakups ended with the phrase, "And take your sauce with you." By now, the alley is alive with chatter and laughter, punctuated by the occasional, involuntary sniff. Someone starts to play the lyre, badly, but the vendor claps along anyway. You find yourself smiling, salt still tingling on your lips, the memory of garum lingering strong, strange, unmistakable, the city's heartbeat, bottled and briny. Then, as the sun slips lower and the air grows thick with promise and possibility, you realize you've joined the ranks of Rome's true initiates, the junk food explorers, the sauce dabbers, the bold, the ones who know that sometimes. The best memories are a little messy, a little smelly, and always shared with strangers who become friends over a simple, unforgettable bite. You step away from the stall, the sound of laughter echoing behind you, a pause, a hush, and a new taste still alive on your tongue. Breathe. You step into a confectioner's stall, drawn by the sticky perfume of honey and toasted flour, and suddenly the air feels thick with sugar, gossip, and the promise that someone, somewhere, is definitely getting cavities. Picture this. You're elbowing your way past the fishmonger's shout, the aroma of olive oil, and a passing donkey that seems determined to take up as much street as possible. Then, like a secret passage in a crumbling villa, the world narrows, brightens, and you find yourself in front of a stall that might as well be the heart of Rome's sugar-soaked dreams. The confectioner round, flour-dusted, and looking as if he's just finished a passionate debate with a honeybee, beckons you closer. The air here isn't just sweet, it's heavy, sticky. The kind of perfume that clings to your hair and makes you think of lazy childhood afternoons spent stealing dates from the kitchen. You lean on the counter, sticky with 1,000 thumbprints, and survey the marvel's honey cakes studded with poppy seeds, fritters slicked with date syrup, and deep-fried dough curls so golden they might have borrowed their hue from Apollo's chariot itself. There are pyramids of sesame brittle sesamum dulce that shatter between your teeth with a crackle loud enough to turn heads. You watch as the confectioner, wielding a copper pot and the authority of a minor deity, pours hot honey over a batch of globuli, puffs of dough that sizzle and swell and beg to be eaten too soon, if you're not careful. You'll scorch your tongue and your dignity both. But nobody ever said Rome's pleasures came without risk. The customers are a study in human sweetness and impatience. There's a baker's apprentice spending his first day's wages on a single libel, a cheesecake-like delicacy meant for the gods but claimed by mortals on feast days. A senator's bored-looking nephew arrives with a pocket full of coins and a face so tragic you suspect he's just been banished from the forum for poor Latin grammar. He orders placenta, not that kind, but a cake of cheese, honey, and layers of pastry so thin they tremble in the breeze. "Make it quick," he mutters, as if he has a date with destiny. The confectioner rolls his eyes. "Good things take time. You want fast. Go eat lentils." The nephew blushes. You suspect he will anyway. Children gather, sticky-fingered, like birds around a statue. They fight over mustazzi, wedding cakes meant to be shared, but just as often stolen, nearby. A young woman clutches a box of nut-studded honey bars as if it holds the key to true love, or at least to surviving another dull dinner at her mother-in-law's house. Everyone is scheming. Everyone is tasting. A bribe of candied pine nuts can get you a secret spot in line. A well-timed compliment about the confectioner's tunic might get you an extra handful of dulce, and yes, he knows exactly what you're doing, and he lets it slide, because flattery and sugar are the twin engines that drive this part of the city. And then there's the scandal. It swirls as thick as the honey glaze. Whispers float about a recipe smuggled from Alexandria, about a rival baker who's been lacing his fritters with too much fennel and not enough respect. One matron swears on Jupiter's beard that the honey used here is too good to be honest. as if bees might have been bribed, or worse, imported from Parthia. Someone else claims to have seen a gladiator eating 2 sesame cakes before a big fight for strength, they say. Though you suspect it's for nerves, Rome is nothing if not a city of rumors, and every sweet bite is tangled with a story, a wink, a threat, or a boast. You buy a handful of honey nuts, careful not to spill them as you step back into the chaos. The flavor is simple, ancient, the roasted crunch of hazelnut, the brightness of honey, a faint tickle of black pepper if you're lucky. You realize the recipe hasn't changed in centuries, and suddenly you feel connected, not just to emperors and slaves, but to everyone who ever needed a little sweetness to balance the salt and vinegar of daily life. For a moment, your worries dissolve, like sugar in hot milk. The sun hangs low, gilding the rooftops and making the honey shimmer. And you imagine the confectioner's stall as a kind of temple, not to any god you've heard of, but to appetite itself. Here, there is no virtue in moderation. Here, you eat what you can, when you can, and you let the crumbs fall where they may. You brush honey from your lips and catch the eye of a passing philosopher, who pauses to watch, then shrugs as if to say, "We're all fools for sweetness." Eventually, maybe he's right, or maybe he's just waiting for his turn at the counter. The last fritters sizzle in the oil, the final globuli vanish, and the confectioner, satisfied, wipes his hands and waves you off with a grin. You step back into the street, sugar on your breath, laughter in your wake, and for a moment, the whole world tastes like possibility. The crowds swirl, the city murmurs, and somewhere, just behind you, another batch of honey cakes begins to rise. A hush settles. You savor and breathe. You slip through a corridor where mosaic floors glimmer like starlight, and just for a moment, the air is heavy with the scent of roasting fowl, honey, and the nervous laughter of those who serve the most powerful man in the world. Let's be honest, you didn't expect to find yourself here, tiptoeing through the marble corridors of the Palatine Hill after sunset, toes aching, eyes wide, and belly making impolite noises that would embarrass a stoic philosopher. But here you are, the city outside draped in indigo, the noise of taverns and hawkers fading behind layers of marble, and the hush of imperial secrecy. You press your palm to the wall. It's cool and faintly damp, echoing with rumors and history, 1,000 ambitions, betrayals, and the odd-dropped olive rolling toward destiny. It's late. The official banquets are over. No more senators winking over Boar's head. No more poets reciting verses about how the moon is definitely a wheel of cheese. Now it's just the inner circle, a hand-picked cohort of advisors, confidants, and a few who are here only because they're too dangerous to leave unsupervised. And the emperor, whoever he happens to be this decade, Augustus, who dined light and liked a good fish sauce joke. Nero, who demanded flamingo tongues and drama in equal measure. Domitian, whose chef was rumored to have invented new desserts just to avoid being thrown into the Tiber. Each emperor leaves his mark, usually on the kitchen budget. You hover behind a heavy curtain. The smell hits first the tang of garum, sharp and briny, layered with honeyed wine and the meaty perfume of spit-roasted chicken, dusted with cumin, and slicked with olive oil so green it looks like something from a painter's palette. The hush is not just the silence of secrecy, it's anticipation. In the shadows, you see a parade of servants, each one holding their breath, moving like ghosts, eyes darting to the ceiling as if the gods themselves are listening in. Tonight, it's not the formal dinner. There are no silver platters heaped with peacock eggs, no poets making awkward toasts about Mars and Venus. No, this is the secret supper, the moment when the emperor, bored or restless or both, demands comfort food the way only the world's most powerful man can. You watch as a tray is brought out, fried dormice rolled in poppy seeds and honey, still sizzling. Yes, dormice. The original Roman junk food. They crunch, they ooze, they're delicious if you don't think too hard about the tale. You hear laughter. A servant, risking her job, has just made a sly comment about the quality of the new batch of African pepper. The emperor, tipsy on Falernian wine, waves a hand and demands a round of riddle dishes. A plate arrives, covered, and when the lid lifts, everyone leans in, eager to guess the ingredients. Is it eel pie or a cunning blend of minced lamb? dates, and herbs from the emperor's own garden. Someone guesses wrong and is sentenced to recite a line of Catullus with a mouthful of cheese. Try that without giggling. Now comes the real treat, the street food the emperor secretly craves. Small fried pastries, golden and sticky with honey, stuffed with pine nuts and perfumed with orange zest. Sausage coins crisped over flame, peppered with coriander and cumin, are served in steaming waxed parchment. As if the imperial palace is just a grander version of the Subura's night stalls. You sense the tension in the room dissolve, advisors loosen their belts, jokes become a shade bolder, and the emperor himself, eyes half-lidded, lets out a sigh so contented it could be carved in marble. A tray of skewered chicken livers, smoky from the coals and glistening with a glaze of date syrup and vinegar, makes the rounds. Someone dares to ask for more. And the emperor, in a rare gesture, offers the last piece with a wink. For a moment, rank is forgotten. Even the taster whose job is less about fine dining and more about not dying smiles, sneaking a piece of honey cake from the edge of the table. But not every moment is so golden. There's an undercurrent, a shiver of anxiety just below the surface. You see a young scribe hesitate before taking a second helping. Does he dare will tomorrow bring a scolding or worse? A reassignment to the grain records office in Ostia, in this palace. Food is never just food. It's message, power, alliance, favor. The emperor's preferences become law. His whims a sort of edible decree. You imagine the kitchen staff, hunched over a recipe tablet, inventing ever more elaborate snacks. Today's deep-fried honey fritter is tomorrow's test of loyalty. A musician plucks a soft tune from a lyre in the corner, gentle, lulling. A song about the sweetness of figs in midsummer. Outside, the city is a blanket of lamps and dreams. But in here, the night is punctuated by laughter, clinking cups, and the giddy, private joy of those few who eat at the emperor's table after dark. You taste a sliver of candied quince, tart and perfumed, and wonder how many emperors have sat here, how many schemes have been hatched over the crumbs of a honey pastry. The hour grows late, the servants clear away the last of the bones and crusts, and the emperor rises, robe trailing like the tail of a sleepy lion. There is a final toast to fortune, to Rome, to the joys of midnight feasting. You slip out, heart pounding, the scent of roasted meats and wine trailing behind you like a secret only you can keep. Outside, the palace is silent, the stars are dusted across the sky, and the hush is velvet, deep and endless. For a moment, you are just another hungry soul in the city, carrying the taste of empire on your tongue, a memory that glimmers long after the last torch is snuffed out, and you pause, breath quiet, as the marble cools again beneath your feet. You find yourself beneath the guttering lamplight of a papena at the city's edge, where laughter fades, the air smells of spilled wine and roasted chestnuts, and the night's final bite lingers on your tongue like a secret you might never tell. Here, in the last hush before dawn, Rome's streets are empty except for the papena's regulars, those who never quite got enough, who savor the last crust of bread as though it were a philosopher's riddle, or maybe just the best you'll get after midnight. You slip through the bead curtain with the practiced stealth of someone avoiding both creditors and ex-lovers, and you find your favorite battered table, scarred by knives and careless games of dice. Around you, the lamps gutter low, painting every face with shadows, the baker with flour dusting his elbows. The poet too poor for a villa, but rich in scandal. The street girl whose laugh is as sharp as her elbows. It's a cast of thousands, distilled into a handful of the city's night creatures. The papena's owner, a matronly woman whose forearms could flatten a gladiator, wipes down the counter with a rag that's seen more spilled wine than the Tiber flood. She slides you a cup of rough red, no questions, and winks as if she already knows what's weighing on your mind. Outside, the city mumbles in its sleep, roosters not quite convinced it's time. The last of the fishmongers trundling their carts through ruts older than most emperors. A distant, echoing clatter that might be chariots or maybe just some poor soul staggering home after one amphora too many. Your table is already set for a Roman midnight feast. There's a bowl of olives, black and wrinkled, glistening in oil the way stars glitter on the Palatine's dark horizon. A wedge of salty cheese, so sharp it could double as a weapon in a back alley, a handful of roasted chickpeas, warm from the hearth, dusted in cumin and salt, their skins blistered and smoky as if they'd spent a season in Vulcan's forge. You try one, and for a moment, the flavor explodes nutty, spicy, with just enough bite to jolt your tongue awake. At the counter, two old men argue no, debate about the best way to pickle a turnip. One swears by honey, the other by vinegar, and curses. A legionary, home on leave, leans back with his feet on a stool, tearing hunks from a loaf smeared with garlic paste and laughing as a skinny dog circles, hopeful for crumbs. There's a whiff of fried dormouse, rich and fatty, as a serving girl passes by with a tray balanced on her head, her hair shining in the lamplight. Somewhere, a lute twangs, out of tune but utterly sincere. You watch as a couple, she and a threadbare stola, he with a scar down one cheek, share a slab of honeyed cake, eating with their fingers, laughing quietly. It's the sort of scene Cicero never wrote about, though you suspect even the great orator must have snuck into a popana or two, craving a bite and a story far from the Senate's marble coolness. Here, the world feels smaller, softer, woven together by food and gossip, and a few coins sliding across the table. Every dish is improvised, every conversation an epic reduced to the size of a stew pot. You lean back, cup in hand, and realize this is where Rome's flavor lives, not in the banquet halls or marble villas, but in moments like this, oil pooling in a battered bowl, laughter echoing off painted plaster, a stranger's smile shared over a stolen fig. The food is never fancy, but it's honest smoked sausages, sweet pastries, tart fruit, salty anchovies pulled from brine and eaten whole. Their flavor so intense you blink away tears and grin anyway. It's the taste of survival and celebration, side by side. And you can't help but feel that every Roman, from emperor to beggar, has shared some version of this midnight meal. And as you scrape the last of the cheese from its clay plate and listen to the gentle, sleepy clatter of the city's heart, you find yourself strangely content. The world outside may be scheming, sharp, unpredictable, but here, for a little while, everything is simple bread, wine, friends, and the dream of another meal. The lamps gutter lower, the conversation slow, and you rise, stretching like a cat, already half dreaming of tomorrow's market, tomorrow's flavors, tomorrow's junk food adventure. So, you step out into the cool pre-dawn air, bread crust in hand, and let the silence wrap around you. Rome sleeps, bellies full, hearts steady. And as you vanish into the shadows, you know you'll always return because the city, in the end, is just 1,000 papanas waiting for the next story, the next bite, and the next hungry soul. The night is over, but the feast never truly ends. A hush, a breath, and the papana's door swings closed behind you, leaving only the memory of flavor on your tongue, and the promise of another Roman day.